ضيفنا فيها هو الرئيس الفرنسي إيمانويل ماكرون.
Mr. President, thank you for granting us this interview with Al Arabiya here in New York. Let's begin with the recognition of the State of Palestine, a historic step that was prepared over a very long time in full coordination with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Despite all the criticism, all the pressure, all the threats, France has remained, as you said yesterday at the United Nations, faithful to its historic commitment to the Middle East. Beyond the impact of the announcement itself, what could be the next step to make this symbolic announcement a concrete reality?
Écoutez, la décision que nous avons prise, c'est en effet celle de...
Thank you very much. The decision we have taken is indeed to launch an initiative with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in line with the mandate given to us by the United Nations, to build a plan that allows the Palestinian people and the Israeli people to live in peace and security. We all condemn the Hamas terrorist attack of October 7, its ignominy, and nothing can justify it. We all call for the release of all hostages still held by Hamas. We all demand an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and humanitarian aid for civilians. But to achieve these results, a political path must be built to end this situation. That is what 142 countries did by voting for the New York Declaration. And so now, the next steps are as follows. We have this peace and security plan for everyone that we have built, supported by 142 states. We have now consulted with the United States of America, and this plan, which brings together a large majority of the international community, was developed jointly between Europeans and Arabs. We want to commit as much as possible. Yesterday, I had a long discussion with President Trump, and our team spoke extensively so that, following the meetings he held yesterday and all this work, we can now move forward with an initiative that could help free the hostages and stop the fighting. That is the first step. That is what we are all waiting for. And I hope it will happen in the coming hours, in the next few days, to free all the hostages, to stop the fighting in Gaza, and provide aid to the civilian population. Immediately after that begins the next phase of work, which is the second pillar of our plan, what we call the day after. And here, what we are proposing is a traditional administration in Gaza that will include members of the Palestinian Authority, with a process validated by the Israelis, to continue the work of training security forces and police who will be deployed in Gaza, work that many of us are already carrying out alongside the Palestinian Authority today. We have also proposed an international stabilization mission to which several countries in the region have already expressed their willingness to contribute. And indeed, at the podium, the Indonesian president also said this the other day.
And which will be mandated by the United Nations.
And which will be mandated by the United Nations. And it is in this context that we will organize the demilitarization and demobilization of Hamas. This is the only way to put an end to Hamas and its activities in Gaza. That means a ceasefire, the release of hostages, the resumption of humanitarian operations, and ultimately the monopoly of arms held by its legitimate administration and the forces serving it. Then comes the demilitarization and dismantling of Hamas. And then the third stage, which is territorial negotiations to build this demilitarized state of Palestine that will recognize Israel. And at the moment when Israel recognizes the state of Palestine, we have secured the commitment of several states, which today do not recognize Israel, that they will do so. This shows that this plan offers Israelis a new, unprecedented prospect for peace. The day Israel recognizes the state of Palestine, in the sequence I just described, Saudi Arabia will recognize Israel. Indonesia will recognize Israel. President Prabowo said this very strongly at the podium. And so, this is the path that we are setting out. It is full of obstacles, we know that, but this is the order in which it must be followed. And now, it is about stopping the fighting and freeing the hostages in the coming days, the priority of priorities.
Very well. Your announcement recognizing the state of Palestine has been criticized by the United States. President Trump even echoed the words of the Israeli Prime Minister, saying that it would be a reward for Hamas. How do you respond to that?
I had the opportunity to raise this yesterday with President Trump and to explain above all where our points of convergence and agreement lie, rather than insisting on the disagreements. But I think the exact opposite. First of all, Hamas has never wanted two states. Never. Hamas wants the destruction of Israel. That is what makes it a terrorist group. If we are weak or cynical enough to think that the two-state solution has become impossible simply because Hamas claims it as its project, then we are making a terrible mistake. So what we are doing is not what Hamas is asking for. The second point is that total war to eradicate Hamas does not work. It works to take down Hamas's leadership, its decision makers, and the Israeli army has succeeded at doing that. But today, there are as many Hamas fighters as there were on October 7. So we must be clear-eyed. After civilians killed, after soldiers wounded and killed, it still doesn't work. Therefore, you can clearly see that the only way to eradicate Hamas is through a political path that consists of isolating and weakening it. That is exactly what the Franco-Saudi initiative allows us to do. First, because we have remobilized the Palestinian Authority, which for the first time in its letter of last June in response to ours, condemned the October 7 attacks, calling them terrorist attacks. And this is tied to the will to dismantle Hamas. Second, because for the first time in the New York Declaration, among the 142 states supporting it, you have both the Arab League and the OIC. So all these states have agreed on the dismantling and demilitarization, the disarmament of Hamas. This means that all the states in the region have agreed to work together on this project. It is best, the only strategy to isolate Hamas and put an end to its harmful actions, which are the root cause of everything we are experiencing.
In your view, what future is there for the Palestinian state with an Israeli government that threatens to annex the West Bank and continues to destroy and kill in Gaza? Since October 7th, 67,000 people have been killed and 154,000 others injured. Tens of thousands of the dead are children. What international body could stop Benjamin Netanyahu today, along with his American ally? Can they stop him? Do they want to stop him?
First, we must explain, demonstrate, and put forward proposals, as we are doing now, to the Israeli authorities and to public opinion. Next, the plan we have drawn up shows that Israel is not left alone. And I believe there is something profoundly false in what Prime Minister Netanyahu sometimes says, that Israel is all alone in the face of adversity, surrounded by hostile neighbors, and therefore has no choice but to resort to war to protect itself. False, false, false. There are 142 states, including all the neighbors, saying, we want peace. We want an Israel living in peace alongside a Palestine. And for those who do not yet recognize you, they will. We are here. There is a path. Therefore, the Israeli government must stop this deadly headlong rush because it is not the best way to protect itself or its children. The best way is to have restored credibility, which it has done, but also to build peace through political and diplomatic means. And the third point is to convince the Americans to commit to this plan. This is the phase we are in now. In the coming hours, President Trump will propose a peace plan. It is the product of all these discussions, these initiatives, and of what the Americans are contributing to the dialogue, after also meeting yesterday with all the states in the region. I believe the President's ambition will be to present it to the Israeli government, to also submit it to Hamas, and to move things forward. And I have confidence. I truly believe in this collective capacity to exert pressure today. No one should accept the annexation of the West Bank. No one. It has nothing to do with October 7, nothing to do with Hamas. It is the signature of a colonial project. That is why it is unacceptable. And today, we must all work to end the fighting in Gaza because it is a humanitarian duty, a duty, I would say, of sheer humanity. We must return to this path of demanding diplomacy. And I hope, I believe, I trust that the United States of America will carry this forward in order to also implement a peace plan that has been built in close coordination with a Franco-Saudi initiative.
One last question on this matter, a double one. In recent weeks, tensions have escalated with the Israeli government considering closing the French consulate in Jerusalem. What would your reaction be if this government carried out its threat? And another question on this issue. Why is it that today European countries are unable to impose sanctions on Israel? Is it the absence of consensus?
First, I hope and I want to believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu will not make such a mistake. Let me repeat, as of today, 11 states, and not insignificant ones, have recognized Palestine, and many others have followed. Why should France be singled out? Next, I believe that the role of our consulate, the historic role of France as a friend of Israel, and also as a friend of pluralism and universalism in the region, is integral to its identity. Such a decision would be another step in denying what Israel itself represents. So I don't want to believe it will happen, and I don't want to engage in hypothetical politics on this point. As for Europe, you are right to say there is not yet consensus on sanctions or responses. But I want us to focus our energy in the coming hours and days on achieving a ceasefire, freeing the hostages, and returning to reason and peace. France is proposing a path to peace, and it is doing so out of friendship for both the Israeli and Palestinian peoples. And I think that requires listening, high standards, and perhaps disagreements we can share, but certainly not reprisals or the continuation of fighting. If the fighting continues, and if Israel's response escalates, then Europeans will have to discuss and react. But I do not want to get caught up in that logic.
Very well. You have emphasized the importance of a full Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon and the end of all violations of Lebanese sovereignty. Is there a divergence with the Americans? You have considered these essential conditions for implementing the Beirut government's plan and ensuring the monopoly of force. The Americans have never regarded Israeli withdrawal as a prerequisite. Is there a divergence with the Americans?
No. The cooperation with the United States of America on Lebanon is very close and very good. President Aoun has always been very clear. From his very first speech, I remember he spoke of the monopoly of weapons being in the hands of the Lebanese armed forces. Rightly so. We support this. And France does not consider that one can resolve security issues in a country by violating that country's sovereignty. It may require rigor and strengthening measures, but never policing others' affairs. Today, we are acting with rigor and precision within the framework we have built together in close coordination with the United States. A plan has been put forward by the Lebanese army, and the government has committed to it. It is a transition framework that allows, step by step, the restoration of the authority of the Lebanese armed forces, the withdrawal of Israeli forces, and the resumption of control with monitoring mechanisms. Let me remind you that the United States and France have a coordinating role in this, and also in eliminating weapons caches and anything that threatens Lebanon's security first and foremost, as well as Israel's. So now, this very precise plan must be deployed. The United States and France will work together to oversee its implementation. And we have secured the extension of the mandate of the United Nations Interim Force, UNIFIL, which allows support for the Lebanese armed forces. To make this possible, we also need to further support the Lebanese armed forces. And that is what we want to do through a support and mobilization conference, which we hope will be held in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Prime Minister told me he wished to host it. France, for its part, will organize a conference for Lebanon's reconstruction and future. So we are organized for the task alongside your President and Prime Minister in Lebanon. We are mobilized at every moment, as President Aoun reiterated yesterday at the United Nations podium. This is what he is fighting for, and what Prime Minister Nawaf Salam is also fighting for. Lebanon is greater than itself. It is the possibility of true pluralism in the region. It is the possibility that everyone, with their religion, their specifics, their culture, can live side by side. That is why Lebanon is a country we cherish and whose unity, territorial integrity, and sovereignty we support. I believe this plan is credible.
Very well. A question on Syria. Today you will meet the interim Syrian president here in New York. Negotiations have begun in Paris between Israel and the Syrian authorities aimed at reaching a security agreement. Today, can we expect a balanced future peace agreement without an Israeli withdrawal from the Golan Heights?
Listen, the challenge today for interim President al-Shara is also the unity and territorial integrity of his country. France welcomed the end of a civil war and the atrocities of Assad's regime after so many years. And without naivety, but with rigor, we consider that the path opening up could make this possible. So we decided to lift sanctions and to engage in this dialogue. What is important to do today? First, that he reach an agreement to restore full sovereignty. And so, regarding the South, discussions must continue with the Israeli authorities. We are hopeful that they may lead to an agreement to stabilize the situation and security. Second, He must finalize negotiations with the Syrian Democratic Forces. They are an important component, and here too, unity must be restored through negotiation, never by force. Third, there have been terrible moments in recent months, unacceptable violence. In the West, Alawites facing Druze. Investigations have been carried out, and we expect President Ashara to see them through, to fight against and punish, to sanction all those who committed these atrocities. Alongside this, let me say that in recent months, we have also seen a Syria that has re-engaged in the fight against Islamist terrorism. We expect it to do even more, to work more closely with our forces in the region on this issue. But it has re-engaged clearly and has also re-engaged in the fight against Captagon, a scourge for the entire region that destroys many lives. There is a path forward. It is not simple after so many years of war, but our responsibility is to support it, to be demanding and to provide the means for success. Here too, economic prospects will be a key element to support the success. I want it because Syrians deserve it. And of course, in this context, one of France's priorities is also to make possible the return of so many refugees, which requires a political framework that protects them and an economic framework in which they can rebuild their lives.
A question on Iran. Today you will meet your Iranian counterparts. The Europeans have issued an ultimatum to Iran that expires Saturday evening. For you, is a diplomatic solution with the Iranians still possible?
The coming hours will tell, but under the treaty we ourselves signed, and which the Iranians also signed, in the context we face, there is a mechanism for the reimposition of massive sanctions, sometimes called the snapback, which has indeed been active since the end of August. If, in the coming hours, the Iranians do not take tangible steps to allow International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors to return to production sites, if they do not give back critical capacities providing transparency to the international community regarding their inability to pursue nuclear weapons, then, under what we signed, and what the Iranians themselves signed, those sanctions must be reinstated. I always hope for discussion, but it depends above all on the seriousness of the Iranian authorities.
Very well. The last question is about Russia and Ukraine. You were the first Western head of state to hold dialogue for months with the Russian president between February and September 2022. Why did that dialogue stop? And could it resume one day? And are you satisfied with the concessions made by the United States during your last visit to Washington with the Europeans?
First, we continued discussions as long as negotiations could produce results. We stopped, not just France, but all European countries, when we were confronted with clear and documented war crimes in Ukraine, and when that dialogue led nowhere, since it had become clear that Russia's will was to wage a full-scale war. I later spoke again with President Putin a few months ago, precisely on the Iranian nuclear issue, and we also revisited the Ukrainian issue. I hope that the coming weeks and months will allow us to resume discussions. That would mean that Russia has chosen to return to the negotiating table. As for the United States, I think the President understood that this issue could not be resolved so quickly. He saw the seriousness of the Europeans and their commitment, and beyond Europe, the coalition of willing nations we built, ready to take responsibility and provide security guarantees to Ukraine. He also saw the heroism of the Ukrainians, their army, and their capacity to resist. In this context, I believe the American president is closer to Ukraine and to the Europeans than he has ever been. I hope this increases pressure on Russia and pushes it to stop fighting, return to negotiations, and build a possible future for them and for all of us. That, I believe, is the direction of history.
To conclude, how would you describe your bilateral relations with Saudi Arabia? It is a country with which you cooperate on a large number of international and regional issues.
They are friendly and built on trust. You are right to say that we have a strong bilateral relationship that spans from economic matters to culture, including defense. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to make a long state visit to the Prime Minister and several ministers, and I was able to measure the strength and depth of our strategic partnership and the friendship that binds us. And on several issues, we are working together. It was a Franco-Saudi initiative that made possible the New York Declaration and the mobilization of 142 countries. It is also with Saudi Arabia that we are working to support the Lebanese armed forces. And it is also with Saudi Arabia, along with several others, that we want to act on Syria. So we have a very strong relationship with many countries in the region: the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. And we are committed to these relationships. But here I want to express the friendship and trust I have for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the partnership we share both bilaterally and regionally.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Merci à vous.